Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Houston, We Got a Problem. We are back picking up where we left off a couple weeks ago with the conversation on trauma. This time, we're going to talk about dealing with confrontation in a healthy way. A lot of times we look at trauma in a bad light, confrontation in a bad light, but there are some healthy ways we can deal with confrontation and conversations. Some people think that when you confront somebody, you got to be aggressive, right? And when you confront somebody, you got to be mean and you got to be, I got to tell it how it is. But a lot of times, whenever you confront somebody in that manner, the other person gets defensive. So, is confrontation, do you have to be aggressive when you confront somebody?
I guess I would say it depends. There's some people who you can have a normal conversation with, and then there's some people who their first thought is to get offended. Mm-hmm. Confrontation does not mean you have to confront someone and do it rudely, but you do have to be honest. There's no point in having a conversation or a confrontation if you're going to sugarcoat what it is you really want to say. Because if you walking on eggshells, you're going to feel some type of way because you feel like you haven't been heard, but the other person cannot hear what you do not say. And then leading along with that, a lot of people on a receiving end, it's all in the delivery of your tone. Your tone can say a lot about how you are confronting someone. Like I can come to you and be like, oh, this hurt me. Like you have to be vulnerable when you're confronting somebody. You just can't go up to them and be like, so you said this and I felt this, because those is fighting words. And yeah, it's levels to it.
Yeah, I think the pre-existing relationship kind of gets people to thinking, do I need to be aggressive or not? So if we're talking about a friendship, then we probably won't be so aggressive. But if we're talking about a relationship dynamic where there has been a previous disrespect, if I go inward like myself, if I notice a pattern of disrespect and I know I need to confront an issue, if I'm being honest, in the back of my mind, I need to be prepared to fight no matter what, because I don't know how this person is going to respond. So I just need to be ready. Now, that doesn't mean I need to go in, let's fight, but I don't know. It depends on the person. It depends on the relationship. If they already seem like they don't like me, I might say something that's going to bother them when I'm, confronting an issue. So I don't think it has to be aggressive, but it definitely depends on who you're talking to. And you might need to be ready for whatever. I don't condone fighting, but I live in New York, so you gotta be ready.
Wait, so Kanye, I have a question. Are you saying that with people you don't know, you go in not necessarily ready for a fight, but prepared for one?
I think you go in prepared to defend your point, because you never know what people are gonna, do. And I'm really quick, unfortunately, to prepare for a altercation if I need to. I'm not gonna tell you my middle name, but it's supposed to mean warlike. And so unfortunately that follows me. So sometimes when I hear a tone a certain way, I'm like, do I need to get ready? But yeah, with people that you don't know, I think it's equally as powerful to not assume that it needs to go to that place. And sometimes it never gets to that place, if you don't start it off that way. Most of the time it never gets to that place, I should say. Not sometimes. I'm not out here fighting in these New York streets, y'all, but it's real out here.
Honey, what does your middle name start with?
A W.
I'm Googling it. Like, what middle name is like?
I don't think you're going to find it. My daddy made it up. The first word, the root word of my middle name is war. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Now my wheels turning like
you'll never guess it.
Something got Mars.
You'll never guess it.
Probably.
Ever.
So you brought up a couple of good points though with about tone and having a previous or a pre-existing relationship with somebody, because a lot of times, and we've seen this before too, how certain people feel like they have authority to speak or rebuke people that they have no relationship with whatsoever. And we also saw where people just feel like, I'm going to speak my truth, I'm going to say whatever comes to my mind, and I don't care how it comes off. But then they do that, but then the person they're talking to, they swole up too, right? And then they go on the attack. And so now you have this problem. So like, in what way? So like, what ways can we better deal with confrontation, or what better ways can we confront somebody and have a positive outcome instead of everybody just descending into an argument or into a fight? Because a lot of times a lot of people feel like confrontation is a fight. Like you're fighting, you're in a disagreement and you're not friends or something like that. So like, how can we, because I also feel like that has roots in trauma, because a lot of times people feel like, well, if I address this issue or whatever, this person might leave, and so I'll just take all this and bottle it in. Or another person may feel like, well, I'm going to be confrontation because I'm not going to let anybody walk all over me, and so this is how I get my way. So there's so many different underlying issues with confrontation that's rooted in trauma, and I want you guys' thoughts on that. Why?
Okay, so something I was thinking about while some things were being mentioned is, I think when it comes to confrontation, I think it depends on the spirit that you're confronting in. You know what I'm saying? Like, are you confronting from a spirit of reconciliation? Are you confronting from a spirit of just like retaliation? Like, what is going to be the cause, like, of your confrontation? Because I think the spirit that you have going into the confrontation will dictate the way that the confrontation goes. Like, I agree that confrontation naturally has a negative connotation, but I don't think that it has to be. I think you can confrontate. That's not a word, y'all. I think you can have a confrontation and it go well, and it can be a positive interaction. But if you're going into it like with the mindset like this is not going to go well, and it's going to just end up being a conflict, well, then that's exactly how it's going to go. But I think if we have the kind of mentality like, hey, the intentions of me doing this, and you think about this like in scripture, if there's an ought with your brother, you go between you and that person alone and you try to fix it. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of times we forget that confrontation was originally meant from a Christian standpoint for reconciliation, not for discord. You know what I'm saying? And so confrontation wasn't meant to just be like, hey, I'm going to cuss you out real quick and we can go our separate ways. It was meant to say, hey, you hurt me in this way. And, I just want to bring it to your attention, and for y'all to be able to come to some kind of understanding and compromise and be able to restore your relationship, not to delve deeper into more conflict. So I think a lot of it really rests on what kind of spirit you have when you're going into it.
When I think about confrontation, there's like two things that I tend to practice. One is, I think, a more secular approach, where instead of using the word you, like you did this and you made me feel, you language, it's best to describe what I feel, how I interpreted a word, just using more objective language so that the person doesn't feel attacked. So that's one thing that I think is like a generally a good practice. But what I really love to do is ask questions, because I think a lot of times confrontation starts off really rough when we've made up our minds about people. For some people who are not, who are more challenging to speak to and work through issues with, it may not matter what you do and say. It could still, come off terribly wrong to just state how you feel. But I think that asking questions gives people the space to really think about their own actions, think about what they meant. And even if they maybe responded negatively to me in something in previous times, but they didn't necessarily mean it that way. It gives them the opportunity to think through it. And based on whatever they say, I could decide what other questions I might have. But it gives me more insight as to what direction this conversation could go in. If I say, hey, did you know that you like pushed me in the hallway? You know, I would never ask this question because I know you pushed me. But hypothetically speaking, if I say, hey, did you know you pushed me in the hallway? And a person says, oh no, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Now, I know this doesn't have to be an aggressive type of conversation. I don't need to prepare for that. But if I say, hey, did you know I was standing in the hallway and you kind of pushed me? And they say, and? Well,
I'm square up.
Now what do we do here? You know? And I mean, there are other ways to, well, there's another question I could ask. Did I do something? When I was in, I'm a teacher in 5th grade, and I really hope that the person who I'm talking about doesn't listen to this podcast at this point, because I'm already started. I'm a teacher, and there's been a teammate that on my grade team who very clearly did not like me. I don't know why. And to this day, I don't know why. Our relationship is a bit better, but to this day, I don't know why for sure. In the 2 years, we've been working together for about 4. In the 2nd year that we started working together, I realized she didn't like me. But that's not my business if people don't like me, unless I personally offended them. So, you know, it's fine. In the 3rd year, I realized she really didn't like me. And for a second, I started to think, how could you not like me that bad? Because we don't really work together. I don't understand. But it was also one of those things that I didn't necessarily need to know. I think there were some moments where I kind of just was like, well, let me just keep my mouth closed. I might be too joyous. I might talk too much. I'm gonna just let you have this whatever kind of space you need. But the 4th year, which was this year, I was kind of like, this is ridiculous. I don't understand it. And so I called her, and this was the beginning of the school year, and I asked her, how can I be a better teammate? And I don't know, she understood the question. I don't think she anticipated it though, because we never really had a conversation about how she felt about me. And oddly enough, her answer was, or one of the first things that she said was, I think I kind of put you in a box of who I thought you were, and maybe you're not that person. And I didn't expect that answer. But it let me know, okay, well, I can be honest now that I know your feelings toward me are not as aggressive as maybe they were in that 2nd year and that 3rd year. And even if, you know, you may be predisposed to kind of, you know, not liking me, at least you're in a place to, for your thoughts about me to maybe change, or we could have a conversation. And so one of the things that I told her, I think the year before, I just kind of didn't say much, didn't say anything that could ruffle her feathers. But in this conversation, I started talking about some of how I felt in the previous years, in that I kind of felt like I might have been a little annoying to her. Like I might have, you know, said some things that rubbed her the wrong way. None of it I really took personally, which I think is another reason why I could successfully have this conversation, because I don't care about being liked. However, if we're going to be working in the same space, if there's something I can do, then I am going to take the lead in creating the space so that you can tell me how you feel. And now I'm prepared. I'm prepared for you to say something a little flip. I'm prepared for you to be a little aggressive, because I'm opening the door, but I'm opening the door with a question. So that's kind of how I like to think about it.
I really love that, because like confrontation can be tender, And there's times where there was a time I remember specifically where I was on the opposing side of your issue, where I was the one that was the aggressor. Um, I was the one that was being, I was, it was 2013. I had an intern partner. And for some reason, my intern partner got loved on all the time. And I just really just got it. I was always in trouble. Like I lost my preaching privileges. I lost my music privileges. Like I felt like, I'm like, am I a kid? Like a lot of this stuff was going on. But meanwhile, this is happening. And my intern partner is doing like, you know, everyone's just loving on him, and he's getting more and more privileges in the ministry, and I'm getting demoted. And I started taking it personally. Like I got really upset to the point where I really began to like mistreat this guy. You know what I'm saying? Where I was just kind of like, you know, we have certain things that we're supposed to do together. I would leave him, or you know what I'm saying, or I would do them without him, and I would avoid him. Like we shared the same room at the church in the prophet's chamber. You know what I'm saying? I just wouldn't even interact with him. And one day he walked in and he put a brand new Scofield Bible on my desk, 2 iTunes gift cards, and my favorite strawberry banana smoothie. And it completely disarmed me. Like it was in that moment where I realized I was being a jerk. I was like mistreated. I was taking my frustrations out on him. And I was like, bro, he said, don't even say it. You were forgiven a long time ago. You know what I'm saying? And you'll find out a lot of times, like when you approach someone to like conscious, like what you did, like you didn't have to, but you put the ball in her court. Like and that's what people have to realize, that subjection takes strength. It's not a weak trait at all. Like what you did was you put yourself under subjection of this other person, knowing that she had probably for more reasons than you probably admitted were unrealistic and unwarranted, that you were the one being mistreated, and yet you put yourself at her mercy. And that was a confrontation that yielded tenderness. And you'll find out where it seems like, you know, I'm not sure if you have more to it, but it seems like there were elements of restoration and reconciliation that were able to happen, not because you were like, hey, you were being let me not say some words because I'm a Christian woman, you know what I'm saying, kind of thing to me, but yet you approached her and said, hey, how can I be better for you? How can I be better to you? And that was enough to really change the tide of things. And so I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that's an element of confrontation that we don't realize is actually a huge weapon, is for us to, for lack of a better phrase, be the bigger person, even when we don't have to be. And you'll be shocked at how when someone, you'll very seldom see someone who's being rude to you being met with kindness, and they can continue being rude to them, because what you've showed them, what you've impressed upon them is like, hey, number one, what you've been doing did not work. And then number two, you'll look like a really big idiot when someone's being nice to you and you're being a jerk to them for no reason. Like it's such a strong disarming mechanism. And when you hear the cliche expression, kill them with kindness, it really does work. And so even that small thing, just to say, hey, how can I be better? It's like, dang, I was expecting her one day to walk over here and cuss me out and that we was going to get it on right here in the conference room. But that's not what she did. She approached me with kindness and with intent. And being able to do that is just as powerful as saying, you did this, you did this, you did this. And so I super commend you, because I was the person who was being a jerk to somebody. And I learned a lesson in that season of my life. And I've never done something like that ever again. But it took someone not confronting me, which he had every ability to confront me and say, dude, you've been being a jerk. What's up? But for him to just be tender. And that completely disarmed me and taught me some lessons that I still teach others to this day. And so I really appreciate that about you, and just being able to approach her that way. That takes a lot of spiritual wisdom and courage to do. So that's pretty awesome.
Thank you. I will say that the time that my husband and I are in like deliverance ministry very often, I think since I've become pregnant and our lives have changed, we don't do it as frequently. We just do like one session at the end of the month in mass. But deliverance ministry kind of teaches you that people are responding to things that are not even of this world. So I think it was the year before last where I kind of resolved this girl can't possibly like me because can't possibly not like me because she doesn't know me, but her demons know me. So, it wasn't even something that was personal. At times I would think like, okay, I must be like annoying her, and you know, that's personal enough, but I don't think you can be involved in deliverance ministry and intercession and seeing people do 180-degree. I had to think about it. Do 180-degree turn, and not recognize the fact that there is a separation between who people are and what might be motivating them. And so if I can tap into like you, the person, not the things that are motivating you to behave this way, but if I can tap into you, the person, with a question that that touches your humanity, then I might be able to access a little bit more of you, and less of whatever you're battling with, because it is not me. You don't even know me.
Yeah, I agree, and that's something that I had to learn as well. Because listen to me, I'm a Jamaican dude from Bronx, New York. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't get pushed around. I just don't. You know what I'm saying? I will lay them holy hands. Like, pray with me, don't play with me. You know what I'm saying? That's really kind of how I'm built. But when I learned the concept that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places, you start realizing that my enemy is not the person who's standing in front of me in this confrontation. It's the spiritual wickedness in high places that's, you know what I'm saying, that's trying to stir whatever this is up. And you really learn to look past, like you said, like when you can look at it and say their problem, like, and I learned that also like with Moses, when Moses went to God and he's complaining like, God, they doing this to me, they doing this to me, they doing this. And God was like, Moses, that quarrel is not with you. You know what I'm saying? It's not with you, it's with me. And that was such a mind-blowing thing for me to be like, a lot of people have stuff going on and they got nothing to do with you. Like, how they treat you is a byproduct of what they got going on, but you're just an outlet. You know what I'm saying? It's not nice, it's not kind, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't feel good. But when you realize, like you said, that what they're dealing with has nothing to do with you, then you stop taking it personally. And your anger begins to turn to pity, and that's how you can approach someone in tenderness. Because you realize that, hey, the issues that you got going on are beyond me, and that way I can be a mechanism that's conducive to growth and rest and healing, versus contributing to a confrontation that really is a battle that's beyond me. So I agree wholeheartedly.
Isn't it difficult to be submissive in that sense, to where you're like, I want to cuss them out, I want to tell them how I feel, but then you approach them like, in a sense, like it seems like you're agitating them, like you're part of the problem. Like, hey, how can I be better towards you? You know, it's like it's kind of hard to do, because like even when you know that you haven't done anything wrong, but you're still like, hey, how can I help you? Because I know to some people it kind of seemed like you're acting like not necessarily like you're the victim, but like you're the bad person. And they can't handle that. So like, what advice would you guys give to people who can't wrap their mind around that concept?
I think I would tell them, I mean, just like Zabe said, what spirit are you using when you go into these situations? Because Kofi, I've told you plenty of times I just wanted to curse somebody out. And at times I even rehearse the whole conversation in my head. Like I know what they're gonna say, so then I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna counterattack and I'm gonna just keep going. And then before I know it, I'm getting loud at somebody that's not even there because I'm anticipating what they're gonna say during this exchange. But then it goes out the window, because when I think about stuff like that, it makes it hard for me to sleep and do all that other stuff. And I have to go back and repent and be like, God, I can't approach this from this way, because it's only going to cause more problems and it's not going to actually fix the situation. So then I would pray. I promise you, I would pray before the conversation and be like, Lord, let whatever I need to say to get through to this person, let it flow out your way. Don't let me go in having this conversation, because the result would not be what I'm looking for. And so that's what makes it easier for me to be like, okay, this is the situation that has occurred. How do you feel about the situation? This is how I feel about the situation. This is how it made me feel. I couldn't talk to you before because I was angry. I am fine. I apologize to you. Like, even when you know for a fact that you're not the problem. But I think I pride myself on apologizing first, because it makes me feel good to be able to apologize for situations that it wasn't even my fault. But just that apology will cause a person to soften and allow them to speak what's on their heart, so that you're able to engage in conversation.
Yeah.
That's Proverbs 15:1. You know, a soft answer turns away wrath. Proverbs 15.
Yeah, I think you know, I'm thinking about this exchange with a coworker who I don't know, I don't have any affection for. The journey was completely different with my husband, who my emotions are all tied up into that, you know? So the way I would answer that for the coworker would be completely different to how I would explain my journey with my husband. But one thing that I kind of carry with me, and it may not be a good thing, I probably wouldn't recommend that people do it, but I do consider that maybe I did do something wrong, because the sin in me doesn't discriminate when it comes out. And I can't talk about the gospel to people and ignore the fact that my sin nature is very much so there. So it's not so much me thinking I did something, but what could I do better? I could do something better, you know? And I think I might have expected her to say something petty, like I could not talk as much, you know? But if that's what was on her mind, I cannot talk as much, then, you know, I might have to tell her, I'm probably going to talk when you don't want to hear my voice, because I'm honest like that, you know? I'll keep that in mind, because I opened the door, you took a shot, all right? But, you know, the fact that I might have said something, because I lose my filter. I don't really code switch that much at work. So I might have said something. Now, when it's my husband, you know, we better now. The grace of God is sufficient. But in the beginning, there was no, how can I be better? Like, I'm not asking you that. Because if you say something I don't like, we got a problem. I don't think we're going to make it. You know? Jermaine in the beginning used to always be like, how can I be a better husband? How can I, you know? And I would just be like, no, you good. You're good because I'm good. We both gonna be good. We not changing. I don't want you telling me you need me to do anything. So you don't need to do anything. We good. Let's just walk together and do this, you know? And it wasn't until recently that I was able to, I guess the root of it is humility, because I just didn't even want to toy with humility in marriage. Because, like, if I'm humble and you start acting crazy, then we're going to fight.
Oh, Lord.
Like, we have to. Like, mama didn't raise no fool. We're not going to make it.
Oh,
Hey, if I could speak to something real quick, Javier, you mentioned before about how you were rehearsing in your head about, like, you know, this interaction, how that was gonna happen. And it reminded me, by the time this airs, I will have resigned from my church as a senior pastor. And because of that, I spent time this week calling some specific families to let them know, hey, I don't want you to be caught off guard on Sunday. I just want you to know this is what's happening. I want you to hear it from me. You know what I'm saying? And personally. And there are several of those people where I really expected a really nasty conversation, and I had rehearsed in my head, all right, he probably gonna say this to me, say this about me, and you just gonna have to roll with it. You know what I'm saying? You know, and then I went and had those conversations, and none of the conversations that I had went how I thought it was gonna be. You know what I'm saying? So I think sometimes we get ourselves into a place where we expect, you know what I'm saying, even conscious how you were talking a little bit about, like, you know, I was prepared for her to say this, I was prepared for her to say that. And we kind of psych ourselves up you know what I'm saying, just in case, like, you know, I'm getting ready to swing. I'm ready, like, stretch a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And then we enter the conversation and we don't even realize that it didn't go any way like we thought it was going to go. And that to me is really humbling as well, because the Lord is, especially after some of these conversations this week, the Lord was like, you know what I'm saying? You don't need to be worrying about it. Like, you walk into it with the right spirit, you know, your testimony is going to take care of it. It's going to take care of it. You know what I'm saying? And really just thinking like, that's something that I got to really stop doing, is trying to just anticipate how something's going to go when I can't think for someone who I have, you know, man's ways are beyond finding out, except unless it's God, you know what I'm saying? So I can expect someone to respond that way. And sometimes we may be right. But I learned that it may not be right for me to expect someone to respond a certain way, knowing that God could be doing something completely different in their heart. You know what I'm saying? And that's tough. And so I really appreciated both of y'all sharing those things, because that's something that was practical for me even just this week, to anticipate something and it not go at all. And so I think when we should be able to go into confrontation from a pure standpoint, like no preconceived notions. Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just think you said something really solid there. Like, we don't know. You really can't tell the ways that God will go ahead of you. You know, you can never really anticipate how much God is going before you in certain conversations. So to feel moved to confront a situation and address a situation, that could be the Holy Spirit telling you, like, go ahead and say something. I've already prepared the terrain. I've already prepared the territory. You just go ahead and say something. And you saying it in the right spirit with the right approach, it could easily turn out much better than you expected.
So there's a couple of things a few things that you guys said. I was taking mental notes and I was going to come back to it. One thing that Connie had said was, all you had said was just how in the spirit of confrontation, like how you go about it. But also I know for me, when I say, hey, what did I do wrong? Because there are times where we don't know if we did something wrong, right? Because you could have done something, said something, and you weren't aware of it. And so I think it is a good thing to be like, hey, just be self-conscious of enough to be like, you know what, if I did something to offend you, because I do it all the time. I get on Jay nerves. So I'll be like, sometimes I ask, like, did I do something? Did I say something? You know, even Zay, sometimes I'm like, bro, did I do or say something that it make, like, no, I'm just, you know, sometimes people are just in their own world and they got their own things going on, so they're thinking about it. Maybe sometimes there's something that you did. So I think it is good to practice being self-conscious and asking people if there is something that you have done or said to offend them. And it's not really something weak. It's not something that we should consider as a weak trait. It actually takes a lot of strength to come to someone and ask them that, because you might be surprised that you have. And a lot of times we like to think that we're the heroes and that we haven't done anything wrong and that everybody else is wrong. They just reacting wrong to what you do. But to me, that's a selfish trait. That's a very self-centered attitude to have. So thank you guys for bringing that part up. I also want to be transparent with myself when it comes to confrontation. It's like there are times where I'm like, man, I don't have the energy for this, because like you say, like y'all said, y'all rehearse these conversations in your mind and you're like, this is how it's going to go. I know this is how they're going to react. I don't really have the strength to deal with that. And so sometimes you allow it to happen, you allow things to keep going on and you're upset. But what would your advice be to people with that attitude? Like, you know what, I don't really want to deal with that because I don't have the strength to.
Kobe, I've told you this before. Like, when I notice that if we're about to have a disagreement and then you're just like, okay. And I'll be like, so that's all you're going to say? You'll be like, yeah. And I'm like, but that's not what you had to say. You're saying this to keep the peace. And you keep doing that. Eventually, you're going to make yourself so angry that you're going to snap out because you're not saying what it is you really want to say. It's like, I encourage people all the time, even when I'm at work. I'm like, I would rather you yell, scream, get whatever you need to get off of your chest at this point. I can deal with you when, oh, you're having a bad day. Okay, fine. We all got bad days. You don't feel like being bothered. Okay, we all feel like that at times. But it's harder when you hold it in and you just let it fester and fester and fester, or you run to other people and you tell other people, but not the person that it actually concerns. Like, I'm a big believer of you don't have to be rude to get your feelings across. So if there's something that you need at that particular moment, or you don't want me to be around or anything, talk, because that's how you establish relationship. You have to talk. I'm not going to know how you feel because I'm going to walk around. I'm going to pretend just like you. If you walking around pretending ain't nothing wrong with you, I'm going to pretend right along with you. And where does that get us? A bunch of pretending and nobody's being real with how they feel. So I would say for people who feel like that, your feelings do matter. What you say and how you feel does matter. And that determines the level of degree of relationship that you have with other people. Because if other people brush it off and act like your feelings doesn't matter, now you see where you stand with them, but at least talk about it.
I actually would like to speak to the contrary. I'm a big proponent of taking the time you need. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes, and I know you can't speak for everyone, there's going to be exceptions always. But sometimes you need to process what you're going to say before you say it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're like, oh, well, I have these things going on, but all I know right now is that it's this big ball of emotions and I'm feeling a certain way, but I have not completely sorted through those things yet. So I'm a big proponent of at least saying, like, if I could be transparent in our marriage, we don't like doing the, what's wrong? Nothing kind of thing. We don't like doing that. So we really been working on saying, okay, I am not okay. I am not happy with you, but I am not wanting to talk about it at the moment. That at least lets you know that, hey, there is something that's wrong, but I don't want to unpack it right now. I will come back to you and we can address it when I've sorted through it and I've worked through my feelings. That way you're not in limbo worrying about like, hey, these things are festered up, or like, you could be in the middle of a dinner and something happened. It could be like, you know what? I'm upset right now, but I don't want to ruin the night. We'll finish playing putt-putt and we'll have a good time. And then we'll have a powwow in the car. You know what I'm saying? Or something like that. And so, but I think it's important to not dismissing Javia's point, because I believe as well that you don't want to just like let it fester. But at least when to the point where you have a clear mindset of like where you are as it pertains to this particular subject, then, at that point you should say something, but not at a place where you don't have all of your emotions and all of your thoughts cleared, or sorted out. Because I think that can cause more harm than good at times. If you may end up saying something that you don't mean, or you do mean, but you just aren't saying it tactfully because you haven't thought it through all the way. And so that's just kind of like what I think on just looking at it from the other side of things.
I agree with you. Like, I think we're saying the same thing. I just need you to communicate that too. It all goes back to communication. If you don't feel like talking, communicate that too. And then I'll be like, okay, when you're ready to talk, we can talk about it. I just need you to say something, because if you're just silent, it doesn't help the situation.
I know, like, for me, the longest time, it's like growing up, that's kind of how I processed and dealt with stuff. It's like I would internalize it and be like, you know what? I'll be all right. And then I just deal with it. And so that's just something that as I've gotten older, I've worked towards not doing as much anymore. It's like I may do it and I find myself doing it, and then I'll be like, okay, let me go ahead and express how I feel or my thoughts on this situation. But it's just like, it's something that, like I said, it's something that I've always done. But it's like, I'm not afraid of confrontation. Like, y'all know that I'm not. There's certain things I'll be like, hey, I'll bring it up or talk about it. And I don't do it I tend to not do it in a disrespectful manner or aggressive manner. I usually, my tone is like this when I'm asking questions or trying to figure out what's going on. But a lot of times, like I said, I just really internalize it. And so I just, like being transparent, it's just something that I do need to continue to work on. Speaking of tone, go ahead, Connie. You got something to say?
Yeah. I was just thinking that, I think that comes from not being exposed to healthy communication in relationships to begin with. So you don't know what a response to your transparent feelings are going, what a healthy response to your transparent feelings could look like until you experience it. So there was a lot that I carried into my marriage from my parents. And there was a lot that I was responding to that Jermaine just didn't understand, because in my head, I am operating under the a poor perspective of submission, bad experiences with authority, and not that Jermaine was a domineering sort of authority, but still trying to understand, like, what does this mean that the husband is the head? And so walking on eggshells, or not being honest about what I felt and thought, legitimately confused Jermaine. Like, if he asked me what I wanted with something and I said, it doesn't matter to me, and then he found out later on that it did matter to me, it would legitimately like bother him, which was crazy to me. Like, I gave you what you wanted. I don't understand, you know? But it's because I projected a previous relationship that was not healthy, and I expected him to respond in the same way. So that exhaustion, and I know that feeling, just feeling exhausted already at what you might do because of my experiences, I think it's normal, but it also goes back to, what do I expect from the relationship? What do we mutually expect from this relationship? And that's what makes saying something worth it. Because if we have agreed that we're going to build something healthy, and we've talked about what healthy communication between us looks like, then now me saying something is me partnering, and I'll use my situation, me partnering with my husband to create something healthy that I may not have seen before, but we're both in agreement to create it.
That's good, because I know like there have been relationships, and not just romantic, but like familial, all that stuff, like where you can't really say much because people react in a negative way, even though you may not mean it in a negative way, but it comes out that way, but you're trying, you don't articulate it well, and it just a poor reaction. And so that just kind of causes you to not really say anything. Like, well, I just keep this to myself. And like I said, it's like a defense mechanism for me. But also too, it's like, just like Jermaine, where you're trying to figure out like what people want, and you want to give it to them. That's a love language. And being considerate, like, hey, what is it that you want? What is it that you like? And you want to give it to them, and you want to, it's like I said, it's a love language. But it's like, do you think that in some ways that could be rooted in past trauma as well?
The question of what do you want? Like,
like being pleasing.
I think in some ways it can. When I think about like the context of our marriage, I think he was just trying to be a really good husband. Mm-hmm. I think he was trying really hard in the beginning to be a really good husband, which was just off-putting for me. We were all off balance the first year. But I think it can be, depending on how much you're overextending yourself to please people. But again, they were basic questions like preference. What do you want for breakfast? Those types of things. Do you want cinnamon raisin bagels or plain bagels? We had a really big argument about that, because we spent our last on cinnamon raisin, and I can't stand cinnamon raisin. And when he found out I don't like cinnamon raisin, it was bad. So there.
I feel like doing it in a notebook. What do you want? What do you want? I felt that. What do you want? It's just a question. What do you want? You like this? All right. If you like it, we'll get it. So
yeah.
Zave, you're contemplating something over there.
I was really just thinking on the question that you posed on whether pleasing is an extension of trauma. Mm-hmm. And I can definitely see how that's a fine line. You know what I'm saying? It sounds a lot like, to me, just like selflessness. You know what I'm saying? I want to please my wife. I want her to be happy, especially I'm sure, as you have been able to speak to him probably before y'all got married, on some of the history in your family and what you were bringing into your marriage, and some of your own personal trauma and baggage, and him kind of trying to cater to those things. I think it can definitely teeter, you know what I'm saying, to that dangerous side. I think if we're not careful, but I just think it speaks volumes to just say, hey, like, I know that you're not used to this. I want to show you what this looks like. You know what I'm saying, kind of thing. And that and that's just something that I was just really just trying to think about, is we can definitely overextend. I just finished doing what's called a genogram. Y'all ever heard of those? A genogram? And a genogram is basically like a family tree, except you include everything. You include like trauma, separations, divorce, mental health, alcoholism, you know, problems with substance abuse. You know, you include everything so you can really track, you know. And I was really looking at mine and be like, wow, I can see on both sides of my family how there's a history of dysfunction and non-lasting marriages. You know what I'm saying? And being able to look at some of these different things and how that can translate into our marriage, because they ask us a lot on the paper, like, how does that translate to how you're affected as an individual? And my wife and I could definitely get to a place where we've been able to watch dysfunction transcend generations to the point where we're trying so hard. We're operating not from a place of love, but from a place of dysfunction and trauma. And that's something that you have to be careful about, like, for lack of a better phrase, overdoing it. You know what I'm saying? Being unrealistic. You know, you're not like this cookie cutter, like, we had this like this before. We're not going to have any problems in our marriage. It's just not true. You know what I'm saying? But being able to meet those obstacles and get over them and being able to work through it and not teetering into a place where we're just operating from a place of trauma, which many people do. And not running from, but running to, you know, kind of having that kind of mentality, being different. And so I just kind of thinking, chewing on that concept. I don't even know, and that's why I didn't speak up, because I wasn't sure I even processed all of it before I answered. But those are some of the thoughts that kind of came to my mind before when you asked.
Yeah, I do feel like it could be a thin line, you know, like a fine line, because like I said before, it is a love language, and some people really come from a pure place. But then you have some people where it comes from a place of fear of abandonment, where they was like, well, if I don't do this, if I don't give them what they want, they're going to leave me like everyone else had. So, or it could be rooted in other things. So it is a fine line. It is a very fine line. But also, when it comes from a pure place, it's very beautiful, because now that you know you have a selfless person that really is about you and cares about you and wants the best for you and only wants to make you happy. You know, so I think that's a good thing. So what ways? Well, hold on. I had a good question I was going to ask about confrontation. Hold on.
You're talking about tone.
Thank you, tone. So we had said this before. Thank you, Zay. We had said this before about tone, right? Where certain people. Okay, let me ask this. Let me ask it this way: is there ever a good time where you have to take an aggressive tone with somebody when you're confronting them?
I like to hear JV first.
Is there ever a time where it's necessary? Yes, it depends. So I mentioned before that I am a supervisor, and I have workers who feel that because they've been there longer than me, that they don't have to do certain things that I ask. And I find myself repeating things multiple times, and then they keep asking me why. Well, why do I have to do this? Why can't you send such and such to do it? Or why do we have to do this? And so after a while, it's like, I hate using my position of authority as a reason to get people to do stuff. But in that moment, I'm like, yo, the reason why you have to do it is because it's your job. And because I'm asking you to do it. The reason why I haven't told such and such to do it is because I'm telling you. Like, do you have a problem with performing the duties that you're getting paid for? You can always say no, but it also doesn't free you from whatever consequences you get as a result of you saying no. And that, what I just said, is exactly what I had to tell somebody. So to me, there are times when you have to be aggressive when it comes to confrontation. Like, even when telling my family no, It's like, oh, or they try to guilt trip me into changing my answer for stuff after I keep saying no. You saw that firsthand. It was like they weren't listening. It was like, are you not hearing what I'm telling you? I'm telling you how I feel about something. I'm telling you I don't want to do something. And you keep coming back and you keep telling me, oh, well, you're this and you're that. No. After a certain time, my nice no's are going to turn into something more aggressive because apparently you're not hearing me when I'm being respectful. So when I'm aggressive, I'm still respectful, but you know that I'm serious while doing it. So yes, I agree. There are some times when I need to be aggressive.
I think there's like a lot of truth to what you're sharing. I think that sometimes when we start off trying to be nice and trying to be sweet, we have to when people like, you know, what's the word? When they start to take it as a weakness, we then have to jump to aggression to kind of balance it off. But I think being assertive is probably that middle ground where if I'm assertive all the time, now it doesn't matter what you think about me. I'm just, you know, I'm telling you exactly what it is. And I say that because like I've taught kids 5th grade. They think they're grown. So, you know, sometimes you guys just talk to them like they are. For about 4 years. And I realized that it's really not that important to seem nice and sweet all the time. But it is important to be clear, and it is important to be fair. And if you can be clear and fair consistently, then I think it minimizes the amount of times that you have to be aggressive. And if you don't expect people to, you don't really expect people to disrespect your authority or your position or to take lightly what you say. But I think I always kind of plan for people to, you know, get me mixed up with somebody else. So I just have to be really clear all the time. Like, you know, you don't know me. That's fine. I'm going to make sure you know from now, this is what it is. So I don't have to get aggressive unless you're inviting me into an aggressive situation.
I think that I just think it's important for us to realize that an aggressive tone doesn't have to equate to yelling. Like I have a friend of mine. I'm a yeller. You know, not now, but I used to be very much so a yeller. And you know, just because you know I'm that aggressive personality that I always had. And my best friend told me one day, and it changed my life. He said, "Xavier, you are educated and eloquent enough to get your point across without having to yell." And that really like changed everything for me in the way that I approached being bothered or upset or angry, where like you said, you can still speak in a tone that is clear and concise and straightforward and stern, and not have to be coming completely unglued to be able to get your point across. And I agree. Sometimes people can say, "Oh, he's a nice guy," but then now I'm really gonna have to put it on a couple levels because you obviously have abused my niceness, and now I'm gonna have to tell you like it is. And that's kind of what I was just thinking about, like hearing Javier and working with her subordinates, and just having to really like put your foot down. It can still be done in a tone that is, that can still be sweet but just authoritative. You know what I'm saying? That can still be authoritative and just go like, listen, here's how this can go. I'm your boss. So you can do what you're supposed to do, or I can write you up. Like that's, you know, that's how this can go. You know what I'm saying? And you being able to get your point across where it's kind of like, you know, you were saying I hate having to like use my position or whatever, but use it. You know what I'm saying? You got it. It's in your tool belt kind of thing. And so there's definitely times where I agree that you have to be, aggressive. And there are times like I had to get aggressive with somebody yesterday because, you know, we got a couple of outreach organizations that's happening at our church at the very same time The problem is these two ladies worked with each other in a different capacity before this. And now that they're operating independently through us, they kind of keep bumping heads a little bit. And somebody was kind of talking to me about like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I was like, I'm handling it. I don't need you to micromanage me. I've been running a multi-million-dollar facility for 4 years now. I know how to do this. You don't have to baby me. I can do it. I promise you I can do it. All right, bye. You know what I'm saying? I didn't yell at him, but I really had to put my foot down. Like, I don't need you to baby me. I can do this. I've been doing it before you got here. And so I think a lot of times tone is actually a good caveat to be able to handle things without having to be explosive, because you can still articulate that kind of strong, authoritative language and without having to put on the volume as well. That's just what I think.
Yeah, and I honestly think what you guys are describing though is being assertive, because aggressive comes with hostility. And I don't think you need to be hostile in order to communicate to people that you mean what you say. And so that might mean, I like the way you mentioned it, where I'm your boss, you can do what I say, or you get it right up. That is just very clear. That's assertive. That's not aggressive. It's consequences. And I think what kind of creates like an issue is when we want to be liked and we want to be well thought of, and we don't want our motives to be unclear. But once you let go of that, you can say whatever you need to say, because they're gonna find out what you mean.
Yeah. And I didn't even realize that until just now that I have been using those terms interchangeably, because I definitely had meant being assertive, not being aggression, because aggression is more emotionally driven. You know what I'm saying? And being able to kind of outburst and stuff. So I'm not sure if that's what you meant, Kofi. But that's kind of what I liked how Conscious really cleared that up.
No,
at least for me personally.
I actually meant aggressive because, like, we know how certain people how they raise their voice or how they just come at people, reckless and sideways, and talk to them crazy and expect people just to take it. So I did want to clear that up, and I'm glad you guys answered, and we made the distinction between being aggressive and being assertive, where being assertive is actually the preferred method. But a lot of times people just feel like they just gotta be buttholes and scream and yell and domineering, and that's really not a great way to lead, and that's not really a great way to get results, positive results, where everybody wins in that scenario. Is there anything else y'all want to add to this about confrontation before we start to wrap it up, since we are on the hour mark?
Oh, if we were still talking about aggression versus assertiveness, then I agree with Connie when she said that I don't get aggressive unless you put me into an aggressive situation.
Ooh, look at that sun. Okay, son.
It's still light here,
Going on that skin.
Aggressive can be good, I think, if you're just not coming unglued. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are some times where you might have to be loud, and like maybe being assertive isn't enough and they're still trying to overpower you. You have to really be like, look, you know what I'm saying? And really kind of shut it down. But I think when you begin to teeter on the side of looking unkept or irrational or operating from a place of wrath, I think that can hurt what you're trying to do versus help it. So I would be lying if I didn't say that I tap into some aggression, because I know I've got it. You know what I'm saying? And that I can. But that a lot of times for me personally, that's more of like not a last resort, because I think last resort is a little bit more is a little intense. But I will tap into it like if I absolutely have to, especially when someone is not treading well with just like a stern assertion. And you have to really like pick it up to the next, like you said, like I won't start that way, but if we have to pick it up, like we can get into it. You know what I'm saying? If you really want to. But I found for me personally, like a lot of times when I prepared to have to get aggressive, that it hasn't gone that way, or that there are other outlets to handle it, so that I didn't have to. So yeah.
All
That's
right.
all I got.
So last thing, Zay, last time you had said something, I think it was you, to where, or maybe it was Nez, where whenever we do get in conversations with people or have conversations with them, we should start to be more considerate of what they deem important or real, because sometimes we have a tendency to dismiss people's feelings, right? And was that you that said that? Yeah,
It was both of us.
it
We
was
kind of were
okay.
volleying that one a little bit.
Yeah, so what do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, to where how we can be a little bit more considerate of people's feelings, even though it may not be a big deal to us?
Yeah. So that I know for me personally, I was explaining, and I do realize that I say for me personally a lot. It's verbal clutter. I'm working on it. Um, but that was something that happened a lot for me as a child, and even as a teenager, and even as a young adult, where even in my household, like especially when it came to like my mom and my sister, they were very good at dismissing my feelings or dismissing other people's feelings. Like, and that's why I'm big on. I'm glad we're talking about like confrontation today, because I do that. Like even like with my wife, I'll be like, "You just hit me with that," and it's not that it hurt me, but it was me letting you know, like, hey, like you should be mannered enough to be able to say, hey, oh, I'm sorry that I did that. And it's not that I need an apology or that I'm sensitive. It's the principle of the fact that don't you did something that was offensive, you should correct it. You know what I'm saying, kind of thing. And so when we talk about speaking to other people's feelings and just keep it like, I just think a lot of times, I even wrote on Facebook, like, you don't have to dismiss someone's feelings whenever they talk to you. Like, we're so good at being like, oh, well, I went through that, you'll be fine. Or girl, you'll be okay, you know what I'm saying? I went through that already. You know what I'm saying? Or it's not that big of a deal. Oh, you're tired? Like, Conscious come in tonight and say like she's tired, you know what I'm saying? She had a long day and she's working through her pregnancy and all this other stuff. And then, you know what I'm saying? And somebody else would come in and be like, well, girl, I was pregnant too, you know what I'm saying? But I'm still here. Like, that's so bad. Like, why would you don't have to dismiss someone else's feelings because they expressed their feelings. And I think that really hurts your rapport with people. And that if you're someone that's listening that does that, number one, stop, right? But number two, you'll begin to see your relationships flourish, because you'll begin to realize that people have taken a step back from talking to you or expressing how they feel around you because you're known to be dismissive. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've had to have that talk with my mom. Like, as an adult, I've been a lot more, I've pushed back a lot with my mom. You know what I'm saying? And even like one of the last kind of like interactions or altercations that we got into, I was telling my mom, I was like, it's a shame that I can't even talk to my own mother about some of these important things because you don't know how to talk to people. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, I'm sorry that I thought that you'd be able to handle this better. And just really kind of pushing that back on her. Like, you are really good at invalidating people's feelings. And because you're going to do that, I'm going to stop talking to you about these things. And it's going to hurt you because you really want to know about these things, but you're good at comparing and contrasting and tearing down because you relate, because you've already done these things. And I think we talked about that with the credit score thing last time. And it's like, it's important to me. So if it's important to me, then you should be able to respect that it's important to me and move accordingly and not dismiss it. And so I'm very good now, and I'm not for cancel culture, but I've really begun to put people at an arm's length that do that and really cut them off from being able to be part of like the inner circle of my feelings and my emotions, because all you're going to do is discredit, and I'm not going to tolerate you, shelving my emotions all because you feel like you can relate to them when you probably actually don't. So
Tell me if this is wrong, because I know a lot of times when people confide in me, I try to relate, or I say I understand, and I try to come from a place of empathy, but I don't try to dismiss it. So for example, they be like, man, I'm going through this and that. I'm like, I understand. And, and I try to just come from a place where like I can relate or whatever. Or maybe if I don't relate, I'm like, man, yeah, I understand how you feel. I don't understand the situation or whatever, but I see how you can feel that way. And I try to come from a place of empathy. Now, is that being dismissive?
well, I'm actually interested in, you actually corrected your own self in the end of that statement. So working in mental health therapy, I have learned some different skills, and I stopped saying, even just this past week with one of my clients, I stopped saying I understand instead of saying I can see how. You actually corrected your own self with it. Where I stopped saying because I don't understand. I don't understand. I may think I understand, but the truth of the matter is I'm not walking in your shoes, experiencing things how you're experiencing, so I don't understand. But from my vantage point, I can see how that could hurt you. I could see how that could put you on edge. I could see how that could raise your anxiety, and it starts to put yourself more in an abstract position versus trying to, because that has happened where you can say, and actually that happened to me about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where someone said, I did make the mistake of saying, I understand these things, and someone snapped back at me and said, no, you don't understand. And you know what I'm saying? And even though, to be transparent, in that specific instance, he did not understand that I had been through something very similar in my life, and so I probably related to him more than I thought he did. But from his perspective, it was his pain, his moment, what he was going through. And to him, it's the most important thing in the world. And for him to hear like, oh, I get it. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be something that encourages people. So just kind of being able to say the same things, but just reroute it to just say like, I can see how that would hurt you, or why that causes you to feel the way that you do. And then following that up with, because, you know what I'm saying? When it's homies, like, when you and me are talking, like, it's fine for you to be like, yeah, man, I understand that. Like, I see how da-da-da-da-da, and we went through this, and this happened to me. Like, we're boys, and we have enough rapport to where you can do that. But we won't always have rapport enough with people to be able to say that, especially when they're in the deep recesses of their pain, and be able to hear that clearly. You know what I'm saying? It causes people to take offense. And so we can begin to say, okay, I can see why that bothers you. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sorry that it does. And instead of like always, like as individuals trying to interject how we can relate to that, is just let them have it. You know what I'm saying? Just provide the empathy from an abstract position instead of putting yourself in the exact position where they're at, because not everyone will receive that well. You know what I'm saying? And we mean well. We mean well. And it was something that I have been learning as well, and obviously still make the error in doing those things. And I just learned that it's reciprocated a lot more clearly, and it's reciprocated well when I shift it from saying, hey, I get it, to being like, I can understand it.
I'm glad that you answered that. I do know that I will take that and put it in my toolbox to be more, to say, I can see how that makes you feel, this, that, and the third. I think that's a good way to go about it. I also will say, and I'll end with this, I think there's someone that I know that's going through a situation where they want someone to confide in them, to share with them, but the way that they react to information it's off-putting, and to where the person really doesn't want to say anything. It kind of closes them off, and they will talk to other people, but they won't share details or be close with a person that should be one of the most important people in their lives, but or in their life rather. So I would just say that whatever we try to do, if we want to build stronger relationships with people, it's important to not interject ourselves, like Zave just said, but to just come from a place of, for lack of a better phrase, submission, or a better phrase is openness, and to not necessarily take it personal, but to just allow the person to feel how they feel, to express how they feel, and that will build a stronger relationship in the future, and allow people to allow that person to be more open with you and share things that you want them to share. Because if you're coming at somebody upset and aggressive and not allowing them to express how they feel without fear of condemnation or judgment, then they're not going to open up with you. So I think it's important to just really be humble and not take things seriously. I do want to thank everybody for giving their time out and coming on here, sharing their wisdom as always. There's a lot to dissect and take away from the things that they said. Connie, thank you for staying up past your bedtime. You struggling girl, go get your ice cream. Zay, my boy, thank you for always showing up and showing out. Jay, I love you. And thank you guys for watching and listening, and we will catch you later.
hierarchy of love enough to can it be earth? We a problem, we the answer. It's a mantra at work. You can't plan to think until you get your hands in the dirt.
Y'all, I'm goofy. So if I see people laughing, I'm gonna laugh. I don't even need to know why.
So all right, just so you can be filled in. Zay was popping his gum, and Jay was like, I can't in good faith keep letting you blow your bubbles on this camera like that. So that's what's going on. So that's
okay. All right.
So I call him out loud. He called himself out when he blew another bubble inside of the camera. All in the camera.
I was already blowing bubbles.
That's why I was trying to help you out. I'm like,
you wasn't helping me. We talking about confrontation and you're doing it right now. Stop. I was in the middle of talking about something important. And what'd you do? You popped the bubble, just trying to tear up my whole chain of thought. I'm in the middle of explaining something important to the people listening.
I texted to you.
It's gonna pop up on my screen, friend.
All right, I'm not.
Now look at that. Conscious is in the middle of having a great thing, and look, we had to stop the podcast, Javia.
Bruh, people gonna be watching this gum popping.
Yeah, you look like a kid. Like you know how kids.
Yeah, you like a gangster blowing that bubble gun. Don't listen to them.
No Black Panther today, son. You see this?
You are revolutionary.
You look like you about to go. You got games on your phone. That's what you look like. That's why I was distracted.
Y'all not finna come for me. Y'all not finna come for me. I was a youth pastor for 6 years. I am the clapback king. Do not do this. Nah, Holy Spirit, sorry. Sorry, Holy Spirit. I spit the gum out. Y'all welcome.
I don't even remember.
I forgot who was
See? That's why you're not gonna take us seriously on this podcast.
This is gonna go at the end as bloopers. All right.
You have to edit this part out, Coach.
I will, but I'll put it at the end of the video.